So, welcome everyone to Carving a New Path. My name is Andrea Hyland, and I'm the host of this show. And if this is your first time here, I just want to give you a few words to say that the podcast began in 2020 in response to all the change that people were experiencing. And now in 2024, we are still experiencing a lot of change. But I wanted to have guests come and just talk about how they've listened to their voice, practices that they use, ways that they've birthed new ways of being in the world. And so today, my guest is Beth Shekinah Terrence. Some of you, I'm sure, have listened to Beth because Beth is, first of all, she is a dear friend and colleague and has been on this show a number of times. We've recorded shows about energetic explorations for evolution with themes around astrology and navigating life. We've talked about self-compassion, May is for meta, and we have many more conversations that will be coming in the new future, I hope. I'm always asking Beth to come. Let's have a conversation. So, first, I just want to say I'm so happy that you're here today, Beth. So, welcome.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm so happy. It's always a joy to connect with you and collaborate and just share with our communities together. So
I
thank
love
you for
that.
having me.
Absolutely. So, I'll just let everyone know the topic today is awakening inner wisdom through feeding your demons. Now, I just want to say up front, if the word demon is scary to you, stay here and listen because we're going to unpack this a little bit. And actually, Beth, yeah, there's so much good information. So just hang out with us a little bit and you will hear more about that. So don't let that word scare you away. All right, I want to begin by introducing Beth and just letting you know about about who she is and some of the things she's involved with. First of all, for over 28 years, Beth Shekinah Terrence has been supporting others on the path of transformation, healing, and integration. She is a trained shaman, holistic transformational facilitator, and recovery coach. She has trained extensively, holding certifications in many holistic modalities and approaches, as well as a Master of Science degree in restorative practices. Beth is passionate about helping others to deepen connection, cultivate compassion, and experience awakening. And she is on a mission to engage individuals, families, communities, and organizations in discovering and enhancing the experience of recovery, well-being, and resilience through the exploration and experience of holistic, restorative, and spiritual pathways. So, feeding your demons has been one of Beth Shekinah's core personal transformational practices for well over a decade. She was first introduced to this compassion practice. So, hear that. If you heard the word feeding your demons, it is a compassion practice. And she heard about it from one of her shamanic teachers as a way to support her own healing journey and as a foundation for her shamanic and holistic healing work with others. And then in 2021, she became certified as a Feeding Your Demons facilitator for individuals and groups. And in 2022, an authorized Feeding Your Demons teacher. So she is incredibly passionate about bringing this amazing compassion process to her individual clients and groups, as well as the communities and organizations she serves. So, just as a reminder, the topic is awakening inner wisdom through feeding your demons. And welcome once again, Beth.
Thank you. Thanks for sharing that.
So let me just get us started by asking you a question. And unless there's something you want to say before, I know I've been talking for a while to lay the foundation here. Anything you want to say before I ask you a
I guess I appreciate that you prefaced, that right away that the word demon can be scary to people, or just, we have discomfort, and that, we'll delve in more as we talk about feeding your demons, that it is a compassion practice. So yeah, and I guess I'm very rooted in compassion practices personally, and in my work with others. I find that's sort of been not sort of that is really my pathway, the path of the heart, and compassion. And May is for Meta is a program I've done for many years, and a practice I feel is essential also. So it's funny, I'm teaching a course later this month on self-care and essential practice. And it's specifically for people working in the recovery field. But I feel like there are some essential practices, and they can take different forms, but compassion practice, to me, is essential for us as human beings, and particularly when we are helping professionals, healers, coaches, leaders, but really everyone. And we all need that in our lives, in our relationships, in our world. So that's one of the reasons I'm so passionate about this.
Well, and hearing you, Beth, I'm realizing I really want us to have record another show soon about and to talk about compassion practices, because I feel like it's been a few years since we did a show where you talked about that. And anyway, I'm just going to add that to my wish list of
Yeah, I
conversations.
would love that. Yeah, I mean, that could take, yeah, that's probably a series of episodes, not just
I
one.
know,
So we can start
absolutely.
with one. Yeah.
Even the foundation of it, because listening to you talk, I'm just aware of like compassion fatigue that people are experiencing in the world right now. And there is a lot of change, and there has been a lot of change going on, and it just feels like it's rapid right now. It's rapid and it's accelerated. So just even presencing that.
Yeah, I agree. And I'll just piggyback on that, like since
Yeah.
the pandemic, especially, but also just living in the world we live in that is very chaotic and stressful and polarized.
Mhm.
Um, that I used to be compassion fatigue was thought of as people who were very much like on the front lines, healthcare workers or behavioral health and things like that. And now I think everybody experiences it on some level, and pretty intensely too, given the experiences of recent years. So
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely. All right, listeners, let's dive in here with Beth. So I'm just going to ask Beth, can you share a brief overview of what the Feeding Your Demons process is for our listeners? So just to lay a foundation, why this practice with ancient roots is beneficial for life today.
yeah, I think we maybe already covered that a little
Okay.
bit
Well,
in what we talked about. So yeah, feeding your demons is, I consider it a potent compassion practice, that does have roots in ancient Tibetan Buddhist shamanic practice of called Cha, or spelled Chod, Chod, which means severance or cutting away. And but it is a secular practice. And so, in saying that, it means that it's accessible for people, regardless of their spiritual or religious backgrounds or traditions. And it was developed by Lama Tsultrim Alioni, who's the leader of a Buddhist community, an international Buddhist community called Taramandala. And when she first was teaching students the traditional Buddhist practice of Cha, she found there was a need for them, which is in many ways a very ritualistic practice. She found there was a need for them to have kind of a more grounded way to work with what was arising for them, and in terms of their challenges and discomfort. And I think as we move on, we'll talk a little bit more about the connection with this practice and shamanism, which we will talk, we explore working with what we might call the shadow, something that is talked about in, different healing and spiritual traditions. And Carl Jung talked about that a lot. And so but having a very accessible way to do that. She created this process, and then it just kind of took off on a life of its own. And she's written a book on it many years ago, and that's called Feeding Your Demons. Um, and so that's accessible. We're going to share the link in the show notes for people who are interested. There's a lot more information on it. And so I guess I'll just say um, it can be an adjunct to a person's spiritual or healing practices. And it could be a foundation for that as well, even though it's a secular practice, which means you don't have to be a Buddhist or practice certain religion or tradition to access it. The nature of the practice itself, I found personally, I'll say at least, can offer a spiritual foundation because we're transforming. One, we are working on um, acceptance and compassion, which to me is spiritual. We could look at it in a lot of different ways. And the basic premise, I'll just say, is like, when we hear the word demon, we touched on that and how just uncomfortable that can be. Our tendency, and especially in Western traditions, is to like, push that away, avert it. We might even say slay the dragon. And so in feeding your demons, part of the aspect of the compassion practice is that rather than fighting something that we are uncomfortable with, we feed it. We learn what it wants and needs, and then we offer that in an energetic way. So I think of it as an alchemical process. When the alchemists, they turned lead into gold or transformed things, maybe from darkness to light. And so feeding your demons is a way we work with what we call demons. And we'll talk a bit more about what that is in this process and how you can identify that as we go on. And that transforms through the process into what we call an ally energy. And so that is accessing our own inner wisdom and inner strength. And so that's where our title, Awakening Inner Wisdom Through Feeding Your Demons, comes in. So I think that's probably all I need to say to give just a touch. But do you want to?
Yeah, I have something else I want to ask you. Because I love sometimes when we talk about the background of it, it's like I'm looking for what's the personal experience because sometimes that story can come in. And I know that you mentioned in your bio that one of your shamanic teachers introduced you to feed your demons and that and from that introduction it became a core transformational process for you. So I was just wondering if you could tell us a little bit about that experience and why you felt such a strong call to not only use the practice but to get trained and to work professionally with clients.
Yeah, thank you. So I guess I'll say at the point when I was introduced to feeding your demons, I had been a holistic practitioner. Um, Gosh, I don't know how many years, but quite a number of years. And I was already on the shamanic path. I was um, training and apprenticing with a shaman in a traditional way. And I continue to follow that pathway today. But at the time, it's kind of interesting actually. I was working in a residential addiction treatment program. It was kind of an innovative program that was holistically based. And my role there was as a shamanic and holistic healing practitioner. And I worked with clients very intensely. I have usually 2 individual sessions a week, and then I led a lot of group processes as well, meditation and mindfulness and shamanic healing and ceremony and ritual. And so that during that time, I was when working in addictions treatment. I had some experience with that over a number of years, both in the holistic realm. My passion had been to bring holistic resources to support addiction and mental health recovery for quite a number of years. And that came through my own personal journey and in supporting other people. And having lost many people in my life, friends and family, both to addiction and suicide and mental health challenges as well. And so I felt really passionate. And so that's kind of what led me to actually work in the addictions field as a counselor for a period of time, but particularly to step into this role and integrate the holistic and shamanic work. And so um, uh, just doing that kind of work is also very challenging. And so I guess I felt at the time it was important for me to deepen in my shamanic practices, and so I was doing some additional training with a teacher locally, both in terms of learning, but also to be immersed in a community um, where I was just supported by others who were doing that work, so that I could have a strong foundation in the work and the energy I was bringing to my clients in the program. And it was during that time I was introduced to feeding your demons. Actually, both the more traditional um, Tibetan Buddhist shamanic practice of Cha, because my shamanic teacher was also Buddhist. And then she introduced us to feeding your demons, particularly as a way to do our personal work. And so that's kind of what happened for me. I found it was just so powerful. I find it's a very simple process in some ways and very powerful and profound in other ways. And so I really took it on almost for many years as a daily practice. And I come back to it again and again um, as well. And so it just gave me an anchor to working on the stuff, our stuff comes up and a lot of, I don't know, I guess, being a practitioner and whether it's a coach or a healer, supporter of others, one of the things we need to learn to do is manage our stuff and what's coming up for us. We need to do it in our life in general, but particularly when we're supporting others. And so it really gave me a foundation in that and staying centered and anchored in both self-compassion and compassion for others. So, um, yeah, so that's kind of how I got into it, and I did really primarily use it for myself for many years. I worked with it. I did introduce it at times to some of my clients. But then during the pandemic, there was an invitation through Tara Mandala and Lama Tsultrim to become a certified facilitator. And then later I became a teacher. Uh, uh, so that's been, I guess, in the last couple of years, I've been really sharing about it a lot more. And it is now a core modality that I work with my clients in my program is holistic shamanic transformation programs and sessions. And I find there's some different shamanic modalities that or approaches that I might integrate, and feeding your demons is definitely a core piece. So,
Well, I want to shine a light. I'm going to jump in here and just shine a light for everyone who hasn't looked at the show page description, because there's Beth's website that will show you the ways, the offerings that are available, and that continues to change and evolve. And she's also on Zoom Tuesday, August 13th at 7 p.m. There is a webinar. So that information is there. So as we're talking about it right now, I want to shine a light on that. We have some other things we're going to talk about, but I just want you to know that if you're going, okay, I'm curious about this, I want to, take a class or be in a group session, that there's the information is there. So I want to highlight that. But
yeah,
Beth,
thanks, Victoria, for sharing that. And
yeah,
I just want to say, because as I'm talking and I'm thinking about it, there's a number of modalities I work with, being in the holistic and energetic realm, that it's hard. One is zero balancing, which is a hands-on body energy work. And I could talk to someone about zero balancing all day, but until they experience that, sometimes it's hard to really get a sense of
exactly.
what it is. And I think, in some ways, feeding your demons is similar, but some of the concepts and the approach we can get a picture of, But if
That's
anybody's
why
interested,
that's why I jumped in right now, because I felt like, okay, just in case somebody's already curious and wants to
yeah,
know
yeah.
more, I just look at the
I am
show.
available for individual sessions as well as some of the group sessions. I'll be offering more of those too, if anyone is interested. Reach
Awesome.
out.
All right, let's circle back to demons because we told the listeners we would get into that, and I know that you've talked about it them a little bit, but let's see what else there is to talk about, define, and even how could someone identify a demon in their own life. So I know that you mentioned shadow work, and so I'm just going to turn it back to you to let's talk about demons.
Yeah, and I just wanted to share this quote. I meant to share it earlier as I was introducing Feeding Your Demons. That comes from Lama Tsultrim Alioni. And it says, "We are coming face to face with what scares us and what we want to get rid of, and we're meeting it with generosity and compassion." So again, just want to, really highlight that concept of feeding, not fighting or turning towards rather than away. Um, and I think even my I say root shamanic teacher Ross Bishop, he has a wonderful book called Healing the Shadow, and he's always taught, when we're we're being faced with needing to face our challenges or discomfort or what we might call it. He's like, I'd rather you face this now or address this now because when we push it away or avoid it, it only gets bigger or bigger and or shows up in different ways in our lives until we're willing. So just to think about it in that way. So in this approach, and in the Buddhist, approach, really, demons are not anything outside of us. They're a part of ourselves, we might say a part of our minds. And yet we engage with them as if they're real. So a lot of times we'll also project them onto others, but they're really anything that that we might say binds or constricts us or drains our energy. That's a good way of thinking about it. So if you just even for the listeners, if you take a moment and think about just what's draining your energy right now, is there something that's maybe dragging you down, uh, something disturbing you? Maybe even it's kind of funny because we call it feeding your demons, but is there something eating at you right now that you just feel like it's just you can't get away from it? So those are things to think about. Again, the shadow aspects, so feelings, patterns or beliefs that we are holding that may no longer be serving us, that are causing us pain or discomfort. Those are all what we might consider demons. And even like habitual patterns. I mentioned addiction, certain behavioral patterns can be a part of it, relationships. Um, and when we think about relationship, I guess demons, I'll say it's not the person that we're in relationship who's the demon, it's the energetic or dynamic or patterns that are inherent in that relationship. Um, and so from that perspective too, thinking about, if we do maybe project onto others sometimes when you look out and you say, oh, I don't like this about this person or about a group of people, that sometimes is a demon as well. So um, it could be on any level, body, mind, emotion, spirit. So even a physical illness, we can consider a demon and approach and treat, use the process to support that, as well as thoughts, emotions, things like that. So.
I want to just jump in. I've had a few sessions with Beth, and I think actually once we did it around a holiday, like that was the demon.
Oh yeah, like I think yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. And so, just you never know what's coming up. And matter of fact, I think I've even scheduled a session with Beth where something else totally different came up right before the session. So just trusting with that. One of the things I've really, well, first of all, Beth just oozes compassion. So she holds a beautiful space and it's so safe to just be there and see what comes up. And one of the things I really like about the practice is that I think of it as it bypasses the mind. And because of the, specifics about the practice that, uh, yeah, can't get into whatever. I just couldn't follow what you were saying and be in my mind with it. It's like just the surrender that
Mhm.
happens.
Mhm.
So I really appreciated that too. Well, let me ask you to describe for the listeners, how does this process support awakening our inner wisdom? And I know you've referred to it a little bit. Is there something else you want to say about that?
Yeah, yeah. And I just want to a little bit piggyback on what you just shared too. Just to add a few things about the process itself, that it is a guided process. So in some ways, has roots in some of the Buddhist practices that are a visualization practice. But also it's somatic. And so it does connect us with our experience, what we're experiencing in our body as well. So I think that you mentioned about it kind of taking us out of the mind. So it's taking us, into the body, into the, and I would say energetic and, uh, spiritual levels as well. So, yeah. So, and then I guess that's, that leads us to awakening inner wisdom because, um, I mentioned earlier about really viewing the process as an alchemical process. And so as we, um, you know, engage in the process, we're connecting with the demon, the energy of the demon, and developing a rapport or a dialogue where we're learning what it really wants and needs, um, and then how it will feel when it's satisfied. And then at some point we begin to offer that in an energetic way, and it transforms. And so as the demon energy transforms, it becomes what we call an ally energy. And so allies can take many forms. Again, this is different, for each person and for each process we do based on what the focus is. You may have a different ally, or the same ally might come as you do if you do the process more and more. And so, but the ally is really the demon energy that transforms into a positive energy. And and then we can relate with it in that way, where it's connecting us with our own inner strength, resilience, and guidance. We receive guidance from the ally in terms of how it supports, how it can help us, how it can protect us, what pledge it makes to us, and how we can access it. And so, I'll just share for myself. Some of my allies are uh, some a spiritual teacher that has passed on, an ancestor. Sometimes I found, particularly with the shamanic work, one of my power animals or totems comes as my ally. So it can really take any form. And for some people, it's angels, or an archangel or an angel. So, so it may be, I guess I'll say, inner wisdom or inner guidance that we were already connected to, and it may come in a new or different way. So it may be helping us to expand our experience of that, or build it if we haven't built it in that way. And I guess there was something I wanted to say about it. I guess this is the thing I find because I do a lot of in my shamanic work, connecting with inner wisdom and spiritual guidance is a foundational piece in many different shamanic journeys and soul retrieval and just different practices we might do. And um, one thing and one reason I've really integrated feeding your demons as a core modality, in addition to the other ways that I work shamanically and holistically, is, as I mentioned, it has that somatic aspect. And so in that, I find people are making a connection in a way that becomes embodied. And so, and more grounded in their experience, that then they can carry that back. A lot of times in shamanic work, we talk about kind of gathering medicine and then carrying it back into our lives and relationships in the world. And so I found once we make this ally connection through feeding your demons, it's very grounded, and we can really bring it to our daily life, sometimes more strongly than if we've accessed it in a different way. And we always talk about once we've made that connection, to really try and find or create some outer representations of what that might be. So maybe a picture of your teacher on your altar. I have some there, or maybe a stone that represents something the ally shared with you, or the color that it brought. So that we can really carry that and access that as we go about our life. So it's really a voice of inner wisdom, and we're cultivating an active relationship as we move through the process.
Mhm. Well, I'm curious now because I know that you were telling me that there has been some recent research on Feed Your Demons, and I don't know if this is science and spirituality coming together or if it's something else, but could you tell us a little bit about that? I was really curious when you told me that and we hadn't really talked about it.
Yes, I know you know me so well that I'm a geek for when science meets spirituality.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
like my
Yeah.
big thing. And
Mhm.
actually, that's one of the, I don't know if it's the reason, but it's kind of part of how I've gotten so jazzed about compassion practices, because there is a lot of research on compassion practices overall, particularly metta and loving kindness, and Tonglen, which is another Buddhist practice, and gratitude. So when I talk about compassion practices overall, I'll just say it's very exciting to me that like we know and spiritual traditions have long known, that or taught that there's benefit. And then science today just really shines a light on how that can support us, both in terms of overall well-being and resilience, but even specifically like body, mind, emotion, spirit. So it's very exciting.
Mhm. Yeah.
So, um, so yeah, so over the last few years, they've been doing some research on feeding. There's actually a COVID. I participated in a study during COVID, but they've had some ongoing research, that they've been working with one of the Buddhist communities out in California, and expanded a little bit, of Buddhist and meditative practitioners, and people who are working with this practice. And so some of the things they found are decreased stress symptoms, reduced anxiety and depression, as well as increased. And so that I always feel like with these practices, there's the kind of what it decreases or reduces, and then what it enhances. And so enhancing self-compassion and satisfaction to life, and also meaning making, and like really having a sense of ourself, our confidence, our self-awareness. And then at the end of feeding your demons, there's the last phase. We rest in awareness, and so there's this experience that I think comes in some ways throughout, through the connection with the ally, but then this rest and dissolution, where we experience the numinous and that sense of connection to source, the universe oneness that people experience too. So those are some of the highlights of some of the recent research. And I think we all need those things, in our modern daily life. Like, I guess that was one of the things I wanted to touch on, of again, why I know we've been talking about doing some different topics, and I, had, we just kind of honed in on this one for today. I know I'll be back and we'll be doing some more energetic explorations for evolution programs together starting in the fall. Um, but having tools that help us navigate life on Earth this time, is essential. And those compassion practices, including feeding your demons, just have so many benefits on all levels. And so it's easy to uh, and our inherent nature, I think, as human beings often is to, again, turn away or push things away rather than turn toward with acceptance. But that's both with ourselves and others, And so this process really supports that on many levels, and it gives us a very practical, in some ways, very practical tool on how to address our challenges and what's causing us discomfort in our lives, and help to promote peace and really a sense of freedom. So,
Beautiful.
yeah.
Well, I'm feeling like I know that I jumped in and mentioned your website and things in the middle because I just felt like it fit in that spot. But do you want to say anything else about how folks can connect with you or get information on Feed Your Demons?
Sure. Yeah. Yes, you can visit my website, which is bethshekinah.com. Well, I think Andrea will share that in the notes.
Mm.
And let's see, I can find me on social media on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and I will be doing. I am available for individual sessions or some group programs. I will be having another 3-month Feeding Your Demons immersion program coming up later, probably later in the fall or early 2025. So lots of different ways, to connect with me, but start with my website. I also have some free resources on compassion practices, and I'll share with Andrea a link for that,
Mhm.
where there's some handouts and audios. And I'm going to be adding more to that going forward. So um, also, I just wanted to mention, I did share some information that will be, I believe, Andrea put in the notes too,
Yeah.
about Lama Tsultrim Malioni, who is the creator of Feeding Your Demons, and how to access information on her, and also the Feeding Your Demons book, or other programs. And then, since we're in August, but September is National Recovery Month here in the United States. And so I will be doing some more offerings during National Recovery Month to support holistic, uh, restorative, and spiritual approaches for addiction, mental health, and trauma recovery. So stay tuned for those.
Wonderful. Well, I was going to ask if there was anything else you'd like to share, so I'll just ask again. I mean, I know that you just shared a few things, but is there anything else you'd like to share to just wrap up this rich time together?
Um, let's see. I guess I just want to say, I want to thank all the listeners for joining us, and thank you for having me, Andrea. And again, feeding your demons is one approach to compassion practice, but there are many types of compassion practices. So I just encourage everybody to find, something they can do, even really every day. It can be gratitude is very simple compassion practice of just thinking of 3 things you're grateful for in the moment, that they find can shift your energy and outlook and things like that. So, and even I didn't mention this when we were talking about the research, but some of the research, particularly on gratitude and some other compassion practices, like they found increases your immune system, like has physiological things as well. So that it's just so essential, I think, to have some compassion practice in your that you kind of hold with you in your, I was going to say in your pocket, that you carry
Mhm.
with you, but in your heart.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's, just the medicine we need, I think, for connection, and with ourselves and others. So encourage you to to do that.
Thank you, Beth. Thank you for being here. I look forward to
Andrea.
more conversations later this year and into 2025. And thank you to the listeners for being here. And I hope that it's brought some value or sparked you to either remember some things that you already knew or to consider a new practice. So thanks, everyone. Bye bye
Thank
now.
you. Take care.